Yeah, it's I think something I found online is while I was doing my manuscript, my article, it seems that 65% of the physicians felt that the clinical peer review process was not helpful. 30% did not know it existed in their hospital. And that's why I call it passive, is it really not it's not out there, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Yeah, Jared, there are so many types of biases, or let's call them cognitive biases. And the two that I was stressing upon in my article that I think are relevant to clinical peer review are the outcome bias and the hindsight bias.
Mm.
And those two, I think, are very common when it comes to a process of clinical peer review, or even things that are related to this, like mortality and morbidity or root cause analysis. We have to be cognizant of those. And it's a very tricky topic because just being aware of it or talking about it is not enough to eliminate it. We have to be really doing more. As knowing the outcome, knowing now that you know the outcome, it makes you exaggerate the likelihood of having known the event beforehand.
Okay, so something bad happened. Now I'm being reviewed, but they know the outcome. So knowing that as they're looking through the medical record and what happened, they're what does that look like? So how's the hindsight bias playing out there?
Right. Let's say a patient comes in and you're doing a lot of tests or a lot of imaging, and in a day or two about outcome happens. Then I'm reviewing this and I look at the outcome and I'm like, wow, this patient passed away. Then I look back at the events, and now because I know the outcome, I would probably exaggerate, or I would have this delusion that I would have known that this happened.
Mhm,
And I would be looking at the labs. I'm like, oh, you see, this was a little bit high. Had I seen this, I would have known that the outcome would be bad.
mhm.
And that's really easy because I'm looking at things in retrospect.
Yeah.
But this is not how clinical practice happens. You,
Mhm.
we don't look at things in retrospect. We looked at things in foresight.
The problem that I think we're all sort of aware of is that peer review as it's done today, it's often involving, internal resources reviewing each other. And while that can be wonderful and a wonderful practice and if it's the only way that peer review is happening, I think we're seeing the sort of, the chinks in the armor in some of that, right? We're seeing, I mean, and you've seen it too. You've got partners reviewing each other, you've got competitors reviewing each other, and the data that comes out of that process isn't necessarily data that's helping anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's the old the right to trial by a jury of your peers, but in the legal system, if you know those people, they are excused from the jury, right? Whereas often in our peer review process, we are reviewing people that not only do we know them, they're our partners, and as we discuss these things, they're in the room with us, and it would be, I think, in an ideal world, it wouldn't matter, and we would look at these cases absent who were the caregivers in that situation. But it's really hard to do, whether it's conscious or subconscious, when you know that that person you're reviewing is your partner, and you know everything about that person, and you also know um, what kind of stressors they're under, and the some of the mitigating factors, and frankly you also know that they're going to be reviewing you, and
Right.
the old saying, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, comes up a lot in peer review, right?
Yeah.
It's that you're going to have a complication, and you're going to be in that seat at some point, and so all of these things um, color that process and make it um, so that it's not exactly what it's intended to be, which is this very unbiased review with the idea of getting to the truth. And in getting to the truth, that you maybe find systematic or decision-making elements that could have been done differently, so that you can not have that happen again.
I know that as a nurse, I've made multiple mistakes. I've made medication errors. I've made treatment errors. I've done the wrong thing to the wrong patient. I've done that. I know that I have, and I bet that I'm gonna make more. And I know that my nurses are gonna make mistakes. And when they do make a mistake, what I try to do is to coach them. Everybody needs a coach. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing something. How can we do this better? How did this happen? Tell me how this happened, because maybe I can intervene and this is a system problem. I try to look at it that way. These are not bad people. This might be a bad process. So there's a nurse outside the door mouthing to give 2,000 units of heparin. The nurses in the room thought he said 10,000 units
Oh my
of
goodness.
heparin.
Yeah.
They didn't double check that. They didn't verify that. They didn't wait for an order that said that, because they trusted the nurse giving them the
Right.
directive.
And
And
2 and 10 behind a glass door looks the same if you're reading lips.
yes, it does. And if you're wearing a PAPR and you're
Yeah.
hot and the situation is very stressful. And so when I found out what was happening, I really, really sat down with myself to rehearse how I was going to address this, because I was afraid that these nurses would deteriorate pretty rapidly if they knew that they had made this big error, and that it could have caused this horrible harm in this patient who was already so incredibly sick. And so we sat down and we had a very open dialogue about it. And I did not see it as like negligence. They could have done a few things differently, but in that moment, I gave them that grace, which they deserved, because they were in a very, very difficult situation. Now,
Yeah.
we talked about all the things they could have done to have avoided that, but neither one of those nurses quit. Neither one of those nurses called in sick for the next month because they felt so bad about what had happened. And I believe that that was because we really worked hard to preserve their integrity over all of this.
I just feel like it's been better since we've been doing the external reviews. And the information is just really, really good in the reviews that we've gotten. And I think the way that they have stated things that could be done differently was tactful. And I just think a lot of how they put it did not make them feel like they were being punished or I mean, I think it was just truly from a standpoint of, you might want to think about this, or I might have done this, and consider this. And so I think that helps a lot with the defensiveness, and you know, and I think the peer review committees that the meetings we had, they were really good. They all talked together. They you know, basically, and even the physician that maybe the concern was with, when they actually came to the table for the committee, they had done some good thinking on what they should have done differently. And so, I mean, I think I don't know, I felt like there was just it just kind of grew to be a much better attitude about it. And I think they understood the reasoning we're doing it, and that it's quality and the patient, what's best in the long run. And that was our goal. And I think they grew to understand that, I guess.